This is Make It Mentionable. I'm Alyssa Patness, and this is the show about being human in a world that encourages us to be robots. I invite you to join me as we journey through the mess, the magic, and the mania in between, because what we can talk about, we can manage. This honest conversation extravaganza includes free-flowing conversations and high doses of vulnerability to remind you that you aren't alone. No topic is off limits, and episodes are designed to leave you smarter, aka more self-aware than when you came. I am so glad you're here. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Make It Mentionable. I'm your host, Alyssa Patness, and today I am here with Julie Schoen, and we're talking about fulfillment, which is, we talk about versions of success, and I think people paint different pictures of success in every episode of this show, but we haven't really dove into the topic of fulfillment and what makes us feel fulfilled in this human existence. And Julie and I are going to dive into it today. So Julie, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Thank you, Alyssa.
So as you know, if you've listened to the show before, I love to have our guests explain a little bit about themselves to kick us off so that we have some orientation as to who you're listening to. So Julie, what is live for you in life right now? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So professionally, I am a copywriter and a numerologist. So I have found ways to combine the art of writing with the science of numbers. And that is what I'm doing professionally right now. I have a huge, long, other lifetimes of work that I did before I came to this. And some of which was I started off as a middle school teacher, which it was actually a dream job for me, which I know a lot of people are like, really, middle school? But I loved teaching middle school. I owned a publishing company and I was a yoga teacher. And then I worked at Gaia as a production assistant and publisher and writer at Gaia. And now I'm doing copywriting and numerology. And so that's amazing. And personally, I'm a mom of 4. My husband and I homeschool our 4 kids, which is wonderful. We both work from home. So it gets crazy, but we love it. We grew up in New Mexico and now we're living in Texas. And things are we're happy people here.
What part of Texas are you in?
We're in the Dallas area. So Fort Worth.
Okay. Yeah. Our paths didn't cross when I was in Texas. But I've been in Denver for 2 years now.
Oh, awesome. When we lived in Boulder, we were right there when I worked at Gaia, it's right there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. So, okay. So you have these range of experiences in different careers, which monetarily, like teacher versus copywriter, there are some differences there. And now being able to work from home and then being a mom to 4 kids. So I think we need to start this conversation around, I'm sure your definition of success has evolved, right? And your definition of fulfillment has evolved from the days of being a teacher to now. And so I'm curious, what's similar and what's different?
It's a good question. So similar, I feel like success for me has always been more of a feeling than anything else. So it's like this feeling of at the end of the day, do I feel fulfilled? Do I feel happy? And that's something that I've chased since, high school, even of just, I don't really care what anyone else says, but how am I feeling about this? As a teacher, it was really difficult to be able to hit that expectation of what I wanted to feel like, because there were so many other pressures, which I didn't realize when I went into the career, pressures from other parents, pressures from the state saying, this is what you have to teach and how you have to perform, pressures of, showing up and doing extracurricular activities with students who want, a club and they don't have anybody who will, be the host of it. And so I'm the sucker that's like, okay, I'll do that. And so that was really hard. And I retired my long 3-year of teaching when I got pregnant with my son, my oldest son, because it was so much energetic output to maintain kind of the level that I wanted to maintain to feel good about what I was doing. And so it shifted. And for me now, success is still very much chasing this, just feeling at the end of the day that I have created something. I'm a big believer in like creating more than we consume. So what am I putting out into the world?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about balance for me because that's just unattainable. So I can't ever balance work and family life. So it's just, how did it feel today? Did it feel good? Did it not? And yeah, that's kind of what success is for me. Of course, it's financial too. I mean, I want to be able to have food on the table and a comfortable place to live. And I set goals because I think it's good to push yourself, to like the point of, can I achieve this? So sometimes I set random monetary goals and just see if I can do it. But that's like a lesser, hold that lightly, versus like the overall feeling of it.
Yeah, I think many times success and wealth get conflated, when really I think we feel most successful when we feel fulfilled. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I think, you can't be successful without feeling fulfilled. And the people that try to, make it just with this like monetary success or some sort of measurable success, that's where burnout happens. I always feel like, because they're not getting anything back from the work they're doing. So they're just going to run on empty real fast.
Yeah, there's something so huge in that, because burnout is obviously something, that many people have experienced. And we've talked about it in the episode. I can't remember. It was an episode on travel. Oh, it was with Irina. We talked about burnout, and I think part of what you said nailed it on the head is we're not designed to function in isolation. And when we aren't doing something bigger than ourselves, which doesn't necessarily mean, we have to be the most altruistic person on the planet, but when we're only doing something for ourselves, that almost can lead to burnout because we're not doing something bigger than us. We're not using it to serve in a bigger way where we do get something back. So I love how you talk about it like that. And that leads me to also wondering, okay, how people end up with this question then of like, well, how the heck do I know that I'm fulfilled? And success for me has always been a feeling too. Like, I think I don't know if I've shared this before. I know I've written about it, but when I was young, if someone had asked me what I wanted to do, it was never teacher, doctor, lawyer, nurse, stereotypical, like I want to be one of these things. It was a feeling. It was like, I would answer, like 8-year-old me walking around is answering, I want to wear high heels and carry a portfolio. And I envisioned myself like in black, walking fast, like just like on a mission. And it's a feeling and an essence. And that was me as a kid. And there were years where I lost that. There were years where I got distracted and lost from it and have had to make my way back. And so what are your thoughts on like in this crazy world of distraction, how do we actually, start to recognize when we actually feel fulfilled?
So yeah, so good. So many good things there. I think first of all, get rid of a lot of the distractions, right? Like we can totally mute out a lot of, things that are leaving us feeling like like we're not being able to be that person that we envisioned being, the high heels, walking down with a briefcase. Who are those people in our life, whether real, like physical 3D life or online, that are getting in our way mentally from being like, I can be this. I think the other thing for me is, there's nothing when you tie success and fulfillment to this feeling, you're in charge of how you feel. So it's like the most liberating thing. And so anytime I'm not feeling this success, I learned like, I can't blame my husband. I can't blame my kids. I can't blame a client. I can't blame the guy at the grocery store. Like that all comes on me deciding how do I want to respond and how would the person that I want to be, how would they respond, you know? And so just like coming back to that. And the more I get into that flow, I feel like the more I feel fulfilled because I'm meeting the expectations that I've set for myself. And I feel like that's where a lot of fulfillment comes in. And so it's being reasonable enough that at the end of the day, you feel like, hey, I did what I set out to do, but also being unreasonable enough that you have something to look forward to get better.
I think for me, one of the key things that you said is around, it's like, we can't put the blame on anyone else. And you said, how do I want to respond? And anytime where we're taking enough of a pause to be able to respond instead of just reacting, like our lives are going to be better because we're not just operating from the past or the future, but we're like actually in the moment, allowing ourselves to experience. And yet so often the pressure is to not do that. So the responding piece is critical for me. And then I think the other piece is in taking that responsibility, because to me, fulfillment, I think we experience fulfillment when we're able to be ourselves. But that's one of the hardest things to do when there are all these other messages of how you should be, how you should act, like what you should be wearing, what you should want. And if we absorb all of those messages constantly, then our perception of who the heck am I can get very distorted, or at least that is definitely a lesson that I had to learn.
No, you're so right. I mean, the distortion that comes from feeling like you have to synthesize everything that the world is telling you to be and to do, it does lead you feeling like you either have a million different personas that you have to live up to, or it leaves you feeling like you're never enough. And both of those aren't good. So I feel like personally, I found that I have cut out, like, we don't really watch TV in our house. We don't, social media is, I'm going to post something and I'm going to very much curate the people whose content I see on there that doesn't trigger me, and helps me with that. And it's practices too. I think that there's a lot of work that we can do around clearing out, because all of us have been programmed in some way or another. We can't help but growing up in the world, you're going to be a product of the society and the culture that you're around and your family and everything you inherited from them. So it's like doing the meditations, it's doing the work, it's facing what you have, taken in, and knowing that it is a computer program, like you can unprogram it, but you have to recognize that that's a program first in order to be successful.
Yes, we have to recognize that literally everything we consume is shaping a thought, and subsequently then it's shaping what we're going to do next. If we think we're amazing at filtering stuff and not letting it affect us, but that is not true whatsoever. Like, I used to watch the show The Americans because I love spy shows. Like, 7-year-old version of me, that's been a constant. I used to ask for like spy motion detectors and spy pens when I was younger.
That's so funny.
So I was watching The Americans, and it's kind of like I don't know, it's darker. And I just realized I feel gross every time I watch this. Same thing. I loved this show Shameless for a long time. And then I realized, like, I feel disgusting. Like, I just feel nasty after watching this. And why do I want to spend my energy to build it back up if I could just not do that thing and it wouldn't go so low in the first place?
So what made you like flip to realize like something that you enjoyed? Like, was there something in your life, like a practice or something that you started doing that made you like recognize like, ooh, this is an icky vibe I'm getting?
I think I intellectualized, as most of us do, I intellectualized the concept first that the things we consume are shaping our thoughts. And then I was able to start paying attention to how did I feel after watching, something like Ted Lasso, which wasn't out at the time, but it's good for the comparison. So how would I feel watching something like Ted Lasso versus watching Shameless? And for me, it's abundantly clear. I feel totally great after watching Ted Lasso, and I learn things, and it's positive and it's happy. And then I don't feel anything like that after watching Shameless. So I think it was, the intellect in the trusting the intellect first, which I tend to do over all the time. And then paying attention to my body.
Yeah. I love that because I think it is like, it's a recognizing of it, and it's paying attention and being intentional, and note like everything you consume, not just, we don't drink too much alcohol in this house because we noticed that, it was a drain on us. It left us feeling negative, and it makes you irritable, and it makes you a worse parent, in my opinion, when your kids are needing you. But it's being intentional and recognizing like there's a lot of people around you that are going to do this. That's going to be tempting to want to like hop on that treadmill with them and do it. But knowing like, I don't have to do this. And what happens if I step off? And, and like you said, then being aware of the, taking into account, well, how did my day go? And how it is everyone around me, and what's my environment like? And the same thing goes for like what you consume mentally, too. And energetically, the people that you're around, same thing.
Exactly. And I struggle with this some because you mentioned earlier, not following people on social who trigger you. And I completely agree. Like if someone is going to catapult me into me comparing myself in a way that isn't beneficial, or if I'm going to like all of a sudden have a self judger pop up, and that drains my energy. So why follow those people? And like maybe at some point in the future, it won't bother me anymore. I will have worked on something and it won't be an issue, because it's certainly not those people. It is definitely something in me. So I reserve the right to then one day follow them again. But for me, I think it's also, I've had to allow in more opinions, and especially things that like I don't agree with. Like part of this is also being able to flex our critical thinking muscle, which to me means we need to have more on both sides, not just more that we agree with, but also looking at things we don't agree with to really cultivate this sense of where do I stand and what does it mean to me?
Absolutely. And when I say I like, filter out things on social media, I feel like that is, I'm not trying to be like selective to be like, I only want people who think like me, that look like me, that act like me, because that makes me like a comfortable, happy person. It's just like that tool. Why not? But I think it's super important that we do, it does take energy. So you have to have enough, but to have enough energy that you can bring people into your life and people into your world that don't think like you, but recognize that's okay. And if we can all like step up to this level of, I think, what we're as humans, like this kind, caring, loving, compassionate, I see you in me, you see yourself in me, kind of thing, then we can have these wonderful conversations and these wonderful, it's kind of like the sharpening of the sword, like the people that you have a little friction with, they're going to make you a better person. So you absolutely want them in your life, as long as they're being intentional with their, communication with you too. So you're not just like getting dumped on.
Right. Oh yes. Boundaries are critical to fulfillment. Another lesson that I deeply had to learn. And it sounds like even the stuff that you were articulating, not watching a ton of TV, not drinking a ton of alcohol, like those are solid boundaries. I think boundaries were such a game changer. I wrote a post one time, like, screw diamonds, boundaries are a girl's best friend, because they change the game every single time.
They do. And it's hard to know, I think for a while, I think a lot of people can relate with this, but you feel like setting boundaries is being mean, and you don't want to, because you feel like, well, I can't, like tell a person no, like how are they going to feel? And now, I feel like as I've gotten older and as I, have experienced more, you realize, well, if I say yes to something I don't want to do, like they're not going to want me there anyway, because mentally I'm saying no still. So like the boundaries are healthy for everybody.
Yeah.
And it is a big piece of fulfillment for sure. Yeah.
And I think we have to have boundaries around our senses. I think that's the biggest thing for like the alcohol conversation and the TV thing. I don't watch too much TV either. And if I drink, it's going to be an espresso martini, and that's pretty much it. But for me, there is nothing worse than someone experiencing trapped creativity. And what I mean by that is like this desire, like this burning desire for something to come out of you, but it being trapped or like avoiding it from distraction. I think a lot of people live in this space and don't even realize it. And so our senses get overstimulated, and we prioritize our eyeballs so much. Like we prioritize seeing things, and we take in all of these images. And I think we deprioritize some of our other senses and just the sense of being still and them not being stimulated. And I think by nature, not being intentional about that hinders our ability to know what fulfills us too.
Absolutely. I think so many people feel like they aren't enough or that they're trapped because they aren't able to really sense what it is they're supposed to do. And just like we were saying before, they've had so many messages like input into their, being that they just feel confused. Then they don't feel like they have enough energy to make a change. In yoga, we talk about these like ruts, samskaras that you create. And so they're like these grooves that you get, stuck in. And it takes a whole lot of effort to like lift a wagon wheel out of that rut. And so if you're not doing things that give you energy, you're going to feel like you're stuck in this spot, even though you know that you're meant for something bigger and that you're supposed to go do something that will leave you feeling better. You just can't. And so it's just like Groundhog Day over and over,
Mm-hmm. And you feel that, and it just leads to more and more energy depletion, because while we may not always be able to recognize how to get out, most of us recognize when we are stuck deep in that groove and in that rut. And so managing our energy becomes a critical piece of fulfillment then. And
absolutely.
I think one of the things that has been hard for me to answer at certain times in my life is, where am I finding enjoyment? And like, what is actually enjoyable to me right now? There have been times where for some reason or another that has been difficult to answer. Have you experienced the same?
I have. And I have absolutely felt like what's enjoyable, how am I being nurtured, how am I being taken care of? That's all kind of along the same line. And then I feel like there's also the piece of this programming that has come into play where you're told that you're not supposed to enjoy something, or you're told that something is supposed to be difficult. So then you think, like I feel like for a long time, marriage is supposed to be really difficult. Being a parent is supposed to be really difficult. Like it's all of this like down negative energy around it. And when I finally cleared that out and let that go, it's like, it's not. Being a parent is joyful, and being in a marriage is wonderful. And I get so much from it. And it's not hard. It's easy. Like it's a lot of fun. And if you can like just bring that in, then you start to recognize like everything around us, I feel like, is meant to be enjoyed. And for whatever reason, we have all of these things that limit us, from thinking like doing the dishes could be like a sacred thing, or folding the laundry could be a very meditative, beautiful experience, because we're told like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost think of the word, it's like bringing this up for me right now. It's not a fully formed thought because I don't think it's come up before, but what if enjoyment is like being in joy? And for that to happen, we have to be in the present moment. We have to be open to experiencing presence, which can be challenging for us to do with how we've been brought up. Mm-hmm. Most of us identify with the past or identify with the future at any given moment. That's why couples get into conflict. Like, conflict happens when two people are choosing to identify with something from the past or with their emotions. And conflict is way easier when only one person is triggered. Then the other person can see enough to like help you work through it, show some compassion. As soon as two people are doing that, it's way more difficult. But I agree with you. Like, life is meant to be enjoyed. Like, if not, what the heck are we doing? So we've created all of these systems though, that say you can't live in the present and you can't enjoy your life. Like, so how do we enjoy then? So for you, what did it take to start clearing out some of those beliefs?
Knowing that I am the one that is feeling this, experiencing this, thinking this, living this life. How can I step up to the plate and say, okay, if I've asked for all of this and I want this big, beautiful life, how can I, actually embody the person that can handle this and start doing those things? So it was meditations, cold water therapy has been like really big for me, like huge. I feel like it just like zaps like all of the like negativity. You can't be sad when you come out of cold water. Like, that's been amazing. And yeah, just kind of this belief, like I am meant to handle what I have been given. And so like step up to the plate and do it.
Yes. And it's such an interesting path, because like part of the human experience is we forget that at times. Like, sometimes I know I'm really great at it. Like, I'm doing the cold water therapy. Like, I start super grounded in the day. For me, my posture is huge. That's been a new one for me that I've learned. Like, my genius does not come through if I'm stooped and in this crap posture. Like, my spine is critical for me feeling aligned and like I'm doing what I need to be doing. And that's something what I love about there being so many modalities. There's no one right answer. Like, so many people want there to be just one thing. Tell me what to do and I will do it, and then it'll be over. But that is the same thing as not taking responsibility either, because putting our power outside of ourselves to seek like this one right way or this one shortcut that's just going to like loosen everything is also not taking responsibility for, wait, no, I got to find the thing that's right for me. I need to take responsibility for the times, even when I forget to show up as my best, because it's so easy to talk about it. And yet I know I do. And I'm curious if you do. Like, sometimes we falter. Sometimes it's not easy to remember to do the things we know to do.
Absolutely. And I think the goal of all of the work that you do energetically and personally is that you can pull yourself out of that faster. It's not like you should never get angry. It's not that you're not going to be sad or you're not going to feel great. It's just, how long am I going to be in that state? And my goal is, can I shift out of this faster and faster? And some days it's, days. And I give myself like a time limit. I say, okay, you're feeling sad and moody. Like, let's give yourself 2 days. But like Friday morning, you're done and you're going to get back to work. And you kind of just like set some ground rules with yourself. And but I think, you don't ever want to flatline. Like, I think like a lot of people, when they think about like meditation or like becoming Zen or whatever, that it's like that you're just supposed to be like this like neutral monk all the time. And like, that's not it. Like, I want to be like so ecstatic, and I'm going to hit lower lows. But it's just, how long do I stay in those lows? And I think just the faster you can course correct. That's the goal for sure.
The bounce back. Yes, I'm totally with you. That is a similar goal for me, like the resilience and being able to come back up. And the only person who's responsible for that is me. Now, at times we need co-regulation. Like, sometimes we need help seeing the blind spots, getting out of it. But at the end of the day, it's my responsibility. Even if someone's helping me co-regulate, helping me see things, if Jeff's holding me while I'm crying or something, at the end of the day, it's still not his responsibility. It's mine. But that bounce back holds so much weight in relationships too. And it makes it easier to have the view of marriage and relationships can be easy. They can be, or they can maybe simple. They can be simple and they can be joyful. And it's in like conflict. You don't want to not have conflict in a relationship. That's inevitable. Like having a view of, oh my gosh, we never fight. This is so good. No, that means something is going unsaid or unspoken. Like conflict shows where the needs are. But being able to bounce back and repair the conflict quicker is always the goal. Like that allows your relationship to flourish because it instills more safety that, okay, we can have tension, but we come back together and can feel more connected, and it's not lasting, days on days on days. I love that you brought up the bounce back.
It reminds me of this quote it's how you do anything is how you do everything, right? And I feel like if you can start doing this in your personal life, then business-wise, it's the same. I'm going to have a client tell me I suck and ditch me. And, in the past, it would have been, I can't do this work anymore. So I better just stop what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, okay, I'm going to get mad, maybe for 5 minutes. And then I'm going to bounce back and I'm going to get 2 new clients to replace that one. And, it's like everything, whatever you're working on is going to impact every single thing you do. So like show up to all of it with so much intention and so much gratitude and try to find enjoyment in all of it, because then you can find enjoyment in, your personal life and your professional life.
Right. It's a ripple effect. Like so much of how I orient my work, you'll appreciate this because you're a copywriter. One of my favorite lines of copy right now that I wrote is, you're not grain. You're not meant to live in a silo.
I love that. Yes.
Because
so good.
Because to me, like the holistic approach, if we just lock off our mindset somewhere, or we just lock off our relationship somewhere, we're not looking at how those are intertwining and causing issues. Many times our relationship issues get projected out into our business or vice versa. And if we're not looking at it holistically, or we don't understand that, like, all of these things play together, then it makes the bounce back harder, because we're just trying to compartmentalize and be like, okay, I'm going to be a robot in this area and I'm going to be a robot in this area. And then somehow I'll ignore the fact that I'm human.
Right. I mean, and what you said earlier, you said like with your spine that you feel like you're like in more of an alignment. I mean, that makes total sense. Like physically, you have to be in alignment in order to feel in alignment with the work that you're creating. And same thing, like physically, you need to feel really healthy and good in order for the work you create to feel really healthy and good. And so it's like, it all ties in. And so that, just comes back to that idea of like fulfillment really is a feeling. It's, it's all of these things. It's not a bank account number. It's not a job title. It could include some of those things, but it has to be this big holistic like snapshot of everything that's going on in your life in order for me to feel really, really fulfilled at the end of every day.
So I want to talk about, so coming back to fulfillment, there are also periods of time though, where things just feel off for longer, or, maybe someone is going through a health thing for longer. And the thing that I'm always, waffling between contemplating on is, yes, I believe in us taking full responsibility for our lives in many ways. I love the message of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. I think our body and our mind are intimately interconnected in a way that, even mainstream health doesn't talk about entirely. And so, but with that, it can be very easy to fall into a place of feeling then like you're responsible for every single thing that happens to you. And I think there's a difference between taking responsibility for how you respond and what you're going to do with challenges versus placing this entire burden of everything that happens to me is my fault. Those are two different things. Yeah. And because I think the struggle is when we talk about things like this, then what happens if someone is going through a harder health time, and we're talking about bouncing back, like some of these cycles take longer. So what wisdom have you cultivated through your own experience about this?
Yeah. I mean, that's so important to talk about because, right now everything in my life is good. And so it's really easy to be able to be like, and then you bounce back and you take a cold shower and you're fine. but it hasn't always been, you have your ebbs and flows. I remember when right after I had my first son, and financially, my husband and I were both self-employed, and we were just trying to figure things out. I mean, we had, most of the time we had like $50 in our bank account, and it was just like, try to, get enough money to pay rent, try to get enough money to, like, we'd go to this little Chinese restaurant and it was like, like $12. Like, I felt like a little kid, like trying to like pay cash and be like, oh, I think we have enough. And I remember just crying on the floor of our apartment. So, because we were working so hard, and it felt like I'm missing out on these opportunities with my son. He's a newborn, he's crying. I'm trying to write, books and do all of these things. And it just didn't feel like it was paying off. And I feel like for me, it's just keep going. That to me, like it might not always feel great, and it might not be what fulfills you. Like, looking back, like that work didn't fulfill me, but we just had to do something to get by. Mm-hmm. And so feeling like, I think as long as you can remember, for me, it was remember that this is a season. My grandma used to always say that it's just a season. So this isn't going to last forever. Try to remember that. And then remember that you're here with a purpose, like you weren't put, I don't believe that you were put on this planet and that you are here just to, be like a bag of cells. Like we are like divinely created, I believe, and that we have very much a reason that we chose to come to this planet at this time. And so knowing that and just feeling like, okay, today might not be perfect, but I'm going to keep going. That's a win, no matter what you're struggling with. I feel like just one foot in front of the other, keep going.
Yeah, I think I love that, because I think it's making the choice to just continue living, to continue going. And there's so much pressure in our culture for everything to be faster and more efficient and done more. And then I look at my orchid. I talk about my orchid on the show so much, but
I have orchids too. Yeah.
I name all my plants. So Olivia, one of my orchids, like I just see her out my office window and I'm like, she grows so slow. Like I have another plant, Ella, who I also talk about. She grows super fast. She is thirsty as all get out and like grows very quickly. But my orchid, Olivia, does not. She grows slow and she blooms slow. And I have to remember that, we each have different paces in different seasons too. And comparing ourselves to someone else's pace is not going to help us get there any faster. We have to fall in love with our own journey, like with our own story. And I think once we start doing that, our purpose starts to sneak out a little bit more and a little bit more.
I have two plants, Harry and Sally, by the way, too. Those are the only two I have named, but Harry and Sally are best friends. They live in my entryway. Yes, I totally resonate with that. I think, it's also being able to hold a belief that things will get better too. And knowing that, like where I am today and how my life is today doesn't have to be how my life is tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so even if this is all I can manage today, whether I'm sick or in pain or dealing with something that's really difficult, tomorrow doesn't have to be like this. And in fact, the next breath doesn't have to be like this if I don't want it to be, and so it's just always holding on to this optimistic idea that, we can constantly we're co-creators in our universe, right? So we get to help shape, and we're not, like you said, we're not fully responsible for everything that happens to us, but we can definitely shape, the reality that exists once those things happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And orchids bloom longer too, which is, because some flowers, it's like they're fast, but they're only like 2 days, but orchids are amazing because those little blooms stay there for like weeks and weeks.
Yes, weeks. And then all of a sudden it'll be like they're growing. And then like 4 will present themselves. And Olivia right now is about to have 20 flowers. And I'm just like, this is amazing. So I think, we getting back to nature too, and just comparing ourselves, to nature, not just to other humans at times, I think can really help us as well. But I want to talk about purpose, because purpose and fulfillment, I think, go so hand in hand. The way I view the world, it's similar to you. Like, I don't think we're put on this planet to live in isolation and just serve ourselves and do nothing and just exist for the sake of existing. That makes no sense to me. And so I believe that we first have to fall in love with ourselves and accept the pieces of ourselves that we want to reject. And I say first because I think we need the awareness around that, like as a starting point, but then it's definitely not a linear path. Like, we can fall in love while we're still working on ourselves, because otherwise none of us would ever be in relationships. Yeah. But I do believe that it starts with us and then it moves out to relationships. And once we have like our needs met, then like we naturally want to show love to other people and want to share things with other people. And then once we kind of feel grounded in relationships, whether that's with kids or with parents or a close friend or a lover, husband, partner, then it also goes out into the world. And I think like when we're missing one of those in some way, we can feel not as fulfilled, because I think our purpose is meant to send a ripple effect. So with all that being said, I think we get obsessed with our purpose being in work. And I want to know what your thought is around this.
Oh my gosh. I was just going to be like, this is the problem. Yeah, it is. I feel like so many times people think that they have to make money with their purpose, which absolutely doesn't need to be the case. I also think too many times people think their purpose needs to be this big, giant thing. Every time I get caught up in that thought, I think of my grandma, she was a school teacher in like a one-room schoolhouse up in Minnesota for, a couple years before she got married. And then you become a housewife. That was, kind of the typical trajectory. So she spent the rest of her life, she passed away a few years ago, like 93, 94. But she spent the rest of her life cooking meals, keeping a home, raising children. She helped raise I have 4 brothers and sisters, so she helped raise us. And that was an amazing purpose. She had a she wasn't on social media. She didn't have 1 million followers. But her ability to transform my life and my sister's life and my brother's lives and my mom and my dad, that is purpose enough. And so whatever she does in her spare time and her other hobbies, she did for enjoyment, but her purpose was just to take care of her little world, which was my whole world and her whole world. And I think that needs to be remembered right now, because I think we get so caught up in thinking, social media, the amount of money that we're making, our job title or whatever. It's like, those can all be great. But if you're looking for fulfillment from those, and if you're looking for purpose from those, I think you're going to really have some regrets in life.
Yes.
It can be a lot smaller.
Yes, especially if you're
bigger, because it's smaller.
Yes. Like, especially if you're looking at it solely from those. Like, I think a lot of people can find fulfillment in their work when it's in alignment with who they are. That comes more easy when you've done the work to have emotional clarity around who you are, and sorted through some of that. But so I think it can be a piece of it. It's just, if it's the sole piece of it, or it's only driven by money, I don't think that it leads you to the same feeling of like true fulfillment. So I'm with you there. And the thing about your grandma, it's so beautiful. And the thing I love is that there's always numerous ways to tell a story. So you can say that, oh yeah, like Julie's grandma was a housewife in Minnesota after being a teacher, and she lived out her days being a housewife and cooking meals for her husband and her kids and potentially her grandkids. Yeah, that's one way of telling the story, and completely diminishing her role in it. Another way of telling the story is more like in line with what you did, and by saying, yeah, my grandma stopped teaching and she spent the rest of her life nourishing the people around her by investing in them and feeding them healthy food and like making sure they had meals in front of them. And those are two different ways of explaining the same scenario. And one is so much richer and honors purpose in an entirely different way.
Yeah. And and the ripple effects, like you said, are insurmountable. Like, because I had a great childhood, my mom, my grandma, and my dad, and my grandpa, now I can go and be a better mom to my kids and be a better wife to my husband. And now the interactions I have, it's like out in the world are better because of that. So it's like my grandma choosing to really step into that role is influencing generations from now. And I think we forget that because we think it is about these more superficial types of things sometimes. But I will say too, you can't, if you don't enjoy the work that you're doing, I feel like that does block your purpose. Like if you hated your job and then you come home to maybe your purpose as a parent or a wife, or, you're a caretaker in another way, you're not going to be able to do that at the same level. So you do have to find, alignment with every aspect of what you're doing.
Yes. So one of the other things that you and I have talked about around fulfillment is this picture of what we do and what we don't do, because so much of fulfillment is also like energy management. And there's this picture of, if you're successful, like, why the hell are you cleaning your own toilet? Or like, why are you doing your own yard work? Like it elevates the image in traditional versions of success, where when it's tied to wealth, where you then all of a sudden spend more money once you make more money on to have other people do things you don't want to do, which is like so ass backwards to me. So you have talked about this, and I'm interested to hear your viewpoint, because at one point you were delegating out more things. And so what was your process with understanding delegation and what we outsource and what might not actually be as good to outsource?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love this question. I want to start with, I think if what you delegate, you have to love. And I think if you don't love what you're delegating, you're going to end up with so many problems. This was my personal experience. If I just tried to get rid of work I didn't want to do, whether it was personally or professionally, and I was just like, whatever, I hate checking my emails, or I hate cleaning my house, or I hate doing these things. If I use that energy and then try to find somebody to fill that role, that is not going to be the right person to fill that role. What I've learned is you really do, if you are going to delegate something, you need to understand all of the nuances that go along with that task that you are delegating. You need to have respect and reverence for that thing. And you need to understand how important it is, so that when you find the right person, you can attract somebody who is bringing not just the ability to like provide a service, but someone who energetically can step into that position and hold that space for everything you're doing, whether it's for your family or for your business. You have to have somebody that, if you, like I said, if you are going to delegate, you need to have somebody that is able to energetically be respectful of the work that you're doing, which you can only attract if you're being respectful. But then I think the other piece of it is that you have to also check in and say, am I avoiding doing something? Is this me really needing the help because I just simply don't have the capacity to be able to do all of these things? Or is it me avoiding doing something and I don't want to do the work, the internal work to figure out why I'm avoiding it? So I'm just going to have somebody cook all of my kids' meals because, and I think that that's a big question. So anytime before my husband and I, either outsource a part of our work, which we definitely do, or we outsource different things my husband actually owns a cleaning business. So like we have people clean homes all the time. But it's like, understanding like, why are we having someone else do these things? Because if you just continually try to have other people do something for you that needs to be done, I think you end up missing a lot of opportunities for growth.
I love that. I love that because so often people, the common narrative is that self-care or like luxury is doing less. And I know you have a different point on this. You have a different viewpoint on this. So to you, what does self-care actually mean?
To me, taking care of yourself really means it's finding ways to get the care that you need from the things that need to be done. And it's not avoiding them. And it's not just, sitting in a bathtub or drinking a glass of wine. It's how can I care for myself while I'm doing the things that I need to do? And that has been a game changer in my life is, if I need to make money for my family, well, how can I do it in such a way that I am being cared for and nurtured while I am doing this task? Or if I need to make dinner tonight for my family, how can I do so in a way that I am being cared for in the process of making dinner? And that shift, I think, is so important. And I think it could really help a lot of people because right now, everywhere I look, it seems like self-care tends to be, you need this reprieve from your daily life. It's like it's like that old adage of you need to if you need a vacation from your work, then you're not doing the right work. It's kind of the same thing. Like if you're constantly searching for self-care because you're not enjoying your life or you're feeling so drained and depleted from your life, well, and then, why is that? Because I really do believe that you should be getting energized by almost everything, if not everything that you do. Like there should be good energy coming from it. It should leave you feeling really good.
Yeah, and it's the difference between choosing situations that enrich us versus deplete us. And so much of that is wrapped up in our attitude because our attitude helps us determine where and how we're focusing our attention. So I love that perspective a lot. It leads me to thinking about even this show. There are plenty of podcasts that operate on a very interview style where the host is just asking a question, or it's an entire season of solo episodes. And for me, the interaction, like I live for it. I live for the interaction. And so for me, it makes way more sense. Like I want to dabble, possibly, we'll see, in some version of a solo episode at some point. But the interaction piece and the conversation is like, I love it. And so for me, doing it in this way, I'm caring for myself because I'm getting so much out of it by doing it this way. And I think that's kind of what you're highlighting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in business, there's so many people offering, the advice like this is the funnel you should use to sell this product. And this is, the mail, like the email tool that you should use and all these things. But at the end of the day, it's like, do those actually make you feel good using them? Because there's a million ways to be successful. If you don't want to make a YouTube channel, don't make a YouTube channel. Even though Marie Forleo is really successful with her YouTube channel, like that doesn't have to be your path forward. And so, yeah, it is always thinking, am I doing this because someone told me I should, or because I have this vision that it's, important, or am I doing it in a way that, maybe the growth will be a little slower, or maybe it's a little bit unconventional, but this is how I feel good doing this work. And that's how it's going to be sustainable then too, because you can keep doing it because you're not just getting drained every single time, that you'd come to do a podcast. If you hated it, you'd be like, I don't want to do this again.
Right. So for example, because you said that, you think most things should give you energy. And so for example, I batch record podcast episodes. I like change my shirt in between and I'm like, okay, next one. But I have so much energy on the days that I do this. Like I get off and I'm like, yes, energy. Like, what are we going to go do? Like, can I run a marathon? I hate running, so that's not going to happen. But it's that level of energy that comes from it. And so in many, many ways, when we give it, we get energy as long as we're doing it in a way, like you said, that cares for ourselves, which takes intention.
It does. It takes intention. And I think that, yeah, that is absolutely the biggest thing. The more intentional you can be, well, I mean, that forces you to be in the present, right? Like we are talking about, so much conflict and struggle happens when you're living in the future, you're living in the past. If you're intentional, you have to be present. And so the more that you can be in that state, then the more you're able to, I think, really find your purpose and then simultaneously be fulfilled.
And I think it's really hard at times, just with traditional narratives to stick in intention. Like it doesn't have to be hard, but I think it can be hard because I firmly believe that like living an intentional life is a radical act because it's massively convenient for many other systems and, for people. It's massively convenient for people who have known us to be one way for us to go with the flow and not be intentional and not curate things in that way.
I mean, you piss a lot of people off when you're unconventional. And my husband and I have learned this, because everyone wants to put you in a box because it helps understand, like they understand the world that way, or they want you to affirm their life choices for them. And so if you're doing something different, they like immediately see it as an attack on that. And it can be really challenging, which is again, why you really do have to be careful with the people that you spend time with, because you shouldn't feel like you're making these big decisions. Like for us right now, homeschooling our kids, we get a lot of people, really disliking that we're doing that. And they want to know, why aren't our kids in public schools? Why aren't they in a private school? And they ask all these questions. But at the end of the day, it's like, I don't have to defend my choices of what I think is right for myself and our children to you. And if you're going to keep pressuring me to defend this or change, then I'm going to have to let you go for a bit, until, like you said, I can either handle this better or until this is like no longer a talking point.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of times we focus on building confidence, even building confidence in kids. That seems we end up choosing competence. Okay, let's build up your competence. Let's build up your skills. And then let's build up your confidence. Confidence is something like that can be learned and it's great to cultivate. There is an underlying shift though that I had to make. I was like, I'm fairly confident. Like I'm confident. I can walk into a room and feel fine, like feel at ease, relaxed. But there was this underlying like crippling doubt at times. And so I realized that the shift needed to be cultivating self-assuredness. And that is that. And when you do that, it makes it so much easier to take responsibility for your life because you know that you're okay, even when things around you appear not to be. And so for me, it's been it was a multi-year journey because sometimes things take longer and it's still something I have to go back and remember. But for me now, every day I try and cultivate self-assuredness where it's like, no, like I can trust my experience and my experience is mine, doesn't need to be argued with, and I can share it how I want. And I'm always going to take into, I trust in myself that I'm always going to take in other opinions and change my mind and grow from them and whatnot. But at the end of the day, like I'm human and I need to have this assuredness in myself. And I think that place opened up whole new levels of fulfillment.
Yes. And that being, confident and like you said, having this self-assurance of things that comes from, I feel like surrounding yourself with people who are supporting you, because I think if you are constantly having to defend yourself, that chips away at your confidence. And so it is finding, your group of people who understand the work you're doing or that have been there, and are proof that what you're doing works, we always say, you don't take advice from someone who doesn't have the results that you want. Right. And so I think that's a big piece of becoming more confident is knowing, okay, maybe this person and this person and this person don't understand what I'm doing or they don't believe it works, but there's 10 people over here that have followed this path that have been super successful, that have the lifestyle I want. So I'm going to, hang out with them and get advice from them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I think like it can be a challenge to remember our purpose at times. And in the moments when you're like in the lane and it's like you're driving down the highway, there's no traffic, great. And then there are other times when it's like, okay, there are a bunch of stop signs and here are some pedestrians and there's a lot of traffic. It can gunk things up. And we have these like fleeting moments then where we temporarily forget. And I think it's in those moments where it's extra important to have the people around you who have seen the higher version, even if you can't remember it right at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why I love journaling too, because it's like, I might be that person for myself. Like 2 days ago, I was that confident person. And so I just go back to 2 days ago. I'm like, oh no, I have this belief. Let's hold on to that.
Yes. Yes. And as someone who I talk about having been journal averse, like most of my life, I'm not as much anymore, but yes, like the ability to do it for yourself instead of putting it on someone else is hugely important too. Like there are things we need more support from other people on. And then it's always this balance of how can I get my needs met? That's what we're doing. And like more often than not, we are actually capable of meeting them ourselves, which we also tend to forget.
Yep, absolutely.
So in talking about fulfillment, we went a bunch of different places. So I'm thinking that, we arrived at some conclusions around fulfillment being a feeling and like an essence that we evoke and also that like we internalize. And I think to an extent, when you're in a community of people who are living out their fulfillment, it brings everyone up together. And then also a huge piece of fulfillment is looking at and defining success in your own way and understanding, taking time to understand and continually evaluate, what do you feel like your purpose is? And that definitely doesn't always have to be tied to work. That's what I got. What did you get?
Yeah. I love that. It's something that just came out to me. You did it with the word enjoy and said that, you have to be in joy to enjoy, and fulfillment. This just came to me, but you have to be full first, right? So you have to know that you have everything you need already. So you have to come being full, but then you have to also be receptive enough to be filled. And so, right? That's good.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
And so I think it's like you have everything you need, take responsibility, you've got this, but then also like do the work and do the things that allow you to continue to be filled up. And if you can, I think, bring those two together, that is a really nice definition of fulfillment.
Oh my goodness. I am so using that. And we will reference this podcast because that's so good. I love that. And
it's good. I love it too. I don't know where it came from. It's good.
This is the power of conversation. This is why I love conversational shows, because it's co-creating some sort of meaning. And that's the essence of communication in the first place, is coming to shared meaning. And it's moments like this that I live for and that just like bring that energy to me. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I live for conversations too. I like always go to the grocery store because I just want to get in a conversation with somebody. My husband's like, you're so weird. I'm like, well, I know it took me 5 hours, but I talked to this nice woman and then I met this person. And, I live for this too.
Yeah. So if someone wants to continue the conversation with you, where can they find you?
Yes. So I have a website, a great place to get in touch with me. It's just my first and last name. So julieschoen.com, where I do a lot of work around numerology and copywriting, specifically around emails. I love emails and think they're a really powerful way to connect with people too, when you can't have a one-on-one conversation. And then they can follow me on Instagram. And yeah, those are my best spots to find me.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Is your Instagram your name as well?
So it's my name, and then someone already had it, of course. And so I put Donka in the middle, like Julie Donka Shane, because Ferris Bueller is one of my all-time favorite movies. And when he sings Donka Shane in the parade, it like makes my heart so warm and fuzzy. So I'm Julie Donka Shane on Instagram.
I'm glad I asked that. That is great. I love it. I love it. And we will link it as well. So Julie, thank you so, so much for being here. I deeply appreciate you coming on and chatting with me about all things fulfillment.
Thank you so much for having me, Alyssa. It was so much fun.
And thank you for tuning in. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Make It Mentionable. You've just finished listening to another episode of Make It Mentionable with me, your host, Alyssa Patmos. If you're looking for more in between episodes, then sign up for The Peel. It's my free newsletter that gives tips for how to navigate whatever life dishes. And it's also the place where I share the juiciest of stories. To check it out, head on over to alyssapatmos.com/The Peel. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.